Real quick. The camera's not focused on the entire table. Probably a good thing. Okay, so now if you can eat it, it's a carrot. If you can shuffle it, it's a tarot.
No.
Or if you
Tarot.
If you shuffle it, it's a tarot.
Yeah.
But what can you say about a caro?
A tarot.
It's used as a divination.
Tarot, carrot, tarot. I'm just trying to figure out how to remember this pronounced tarot, right?
Yeah, tarot.
Tarot. Okay, good.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. Emily Volpentesta and I are co-hosts, and we have with us Alicia Lyon Folberth.
Yes.
And Alicia is a reverend, and we're going to talk a little bit about a lot of things that you wish your reverend would talk about. But Alicia, introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Yep, there's my name.
You're on.
All right.
So just talk. Yeah.
Well, what shall I tell everybody?
All right. Well, tell us. What are you? You're a reverend of a. What are you a reverend of?
Oh, the Pantheon Temple. It's Connecticut's oldest Wiccan and pagan temple. Mm-hmm. And we also produce a local public access television show too, called Keepers of the Flame.
Oh, cool.
Keepers of the Flame. Now, which station is that on?
That is Channel 10 in the Valley.
In the Valley, which is Derby,
Ansonia, Shelton, Naugatuck. Yeah, I think part of Milford.
Okay.
How did you get into becoming a reverend in this temple?
Well, that's kind of like a long story. How much time you got?
We got time.
Okay.
You can keep shuffling when you talk.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's an OCD thing when I shuffle, Usually when I'm reading for people, I'm putting the energy of what they're talking to me about basically into the cards before I toss out the cards. But it's my OCD thing of shuffling constantly. But, when I started the temple, it was something that was kind of strange because, years before I had gotten a message from my goddess that I was supposed to start some kind of pagan church. Mm-hmm. And at the time I was very new, and I'm like, okay, right, sure, me, a church. I don't even know what I'm doing.
So you didn't start out, you started out in what religion were you raised
I
with?
was raised Christian, but, Protestant. But I stopped going pretty much right after Sunday school. I think I only went to a couple of services because I wanted to see my father's pay stub. Apparently $20 bills in the bowl were not enough back in the 70s. So, yeah, they were deciding how much everybody had to pay. Mm-hmm. And at that point, my mother said, enough, we're leaving this church. And I never had to go back. And I was actually kind of happy because, the place where I really found divinity was out in the woods anyway. I had a half a mountainside as my playground. I'm also part Cherokee, and, growing up, somehow that just clicked with me. So everything that I could see about Native Americans on TV or in a book or whatever I was interested in. So I tried to explore that as much as I could as a mostly white kid growing up in the suburbs.
Right.
But this kind of overshadowed its way into the Wiccan path because when you're into that kind of nature spirituality, coming into Wicca was very easy. Even though I didn't actually decide I was Wiccan right away, that was what I was introduced to. I ended up doing Celtic Reconstructionism for a while. There's no conflict at all with the natural world, with psychic abilities, with magic, when you are on the Wiccan and pagan path. And I've always been a very psychic, very spiritual person, and I've had lots of experiences I couldn't explain growing up. It wasn't until I came out of the broom closet when I was 30, with my relatives,
The broom closet.
that I found out that, yes, indeed, the second sight did run in my family. It's like, oh, good, now you tell me. Now you tell me that Nana used to read tea leaves. And it was just one of those things that's traditionally Scottish where, you sweep everything under the rug until it's the size of an elephant, and then you talk about the weather.
Right.
So, But this kind of led me onto the path. So when I got that message, I was really very new to everything. I was just starting to have some spiritual experiences with my goddess anyway, who kind of found me. So as I continued onto this path, this is still in the back of my head. Okay, this is something I should do. When it came down to it at one point, this is back in the early days of AOL, we had connected with some other people on the internet, and also too there were people from a former networking organization we were in contact with, and we got together and decided we were going to hold a Samhain ritual, Halloween, in our backyard. And after that ritual, it's like, well, we need to do something with this, and we tossed it around. Well, what do we want to do? It's like, no more networking organization. Don't want to do networking organization. Right. It's like, do we want to form a coven? Well, we're all very different. How are we all going to work that way?
Right.
Because I was doing the Celtic thing, and somebody else in the group was doing kind of like Greek Wiccan. Somebody else was more in a Hindu path, and I'm like, we need to find a way to make it work, because at that point, what was commonly happening in the beginnings of the Wiccan and pagan community was a lot of lord and lady stuff. Kind of more focus on duotheism rather than polytheism. So we've got, all of us who are coming from divergent paths that are coming together. And I said, well, what about a church? And we had bantered it around, do we want to call it a temple or church? We did decide on a church. At the time, we were thinking, well, maybe temple sounded too Jewish. So we came up with Pagan Community Church as the idea that it would be embracing to people of different faiths,
right?
Different types of polytheism and whatnot.
So an opportunity for a lot of divergent thought to come together and share.
Kind of like pagan Unitarian in a way.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's exactly what I was thinking of Unitarian, where they have a lot of people that are not exactly of the same mind, but open-minded enough to listen to somebody else's viewpoint and toss it about and decide what parts they'd keep and what parts they wouldn't keep.
So that's about where we were at when we started, and. So,
what did you do for that Halloween festival? What did you decide?
It wasn't a festival. It was just a ritual in the backyard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I still have a copy of it somewhere that I wrote. It was very simple. It was a very simple ritual. Not a lot of bells and whistles. We sent some letters over to the other side, putting them in a little fire in the cauldron for people that we love.
When you say that, you mean communicating with people, with family members and friends who had passed on?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's one of the things that sometimes we still do, for ceremony, especially private ceremony. It tends to get deeply personal at that point, But we can, through the use of magic, through ritual, we can do all sorts of things that, together as a group that we couldn't necessarily do, any one of us really on our own. So, working as a group can become a very powerful thing in terms of just even self-growth and change.
Okay, talk about the difference between magic with a C and magic. You're talking in the sense of the K, right? Is there a difference between?
Well, Aleister Crowley ended up putting a K on magic to differentiate it from stage magic.
Right.
And in that sense, I do agree with it, even though a lot of people say, well, I like the C. And it's like, well, that's okay, but then I keep having to go back and forth with people about explaining that I'm not doing stage magic. A lot of people think, illusionists,
right?
Like David Copperfield or somebody, that what they're actually performing is real magic, that it's not illusion magic. And I'm like, you don't get the fact that this is an act. You don't get the fact that this is entertainment. Okay.
What do you mean when you saw the person in half there? You're not really sawing them in half?
So what do you consider magic? When you say magic, what are you referring to?
Creating change. Oh. We actively work with the powers that be to create change. We see ourselves as co-creators, with our universe. So, we manifest things in our life that we need to. Be it for ourselves, be it for others,
right.
Things that need to happen. Sometimes it's not always so easy to just do things on the physical plane. And quite frankly, for those of us that are spiritual, we can't do things the way everybody else does. We have to do them on the spiritual plane as well, because otherwise things just don't seem to happen for us. You know, if we try and just say we're going to try and somehow shut ourselves off from being spiritual beings and never do any magic for ourselves, we're not going to be as effective as we would be otherwise in our lives.
Well, there's a lot of things in all the religions that are kind of that you could kind of look at and say that's a little bit hinky, like fear of the number 13, triskaidekaphobia. A lot of people that are in
Black cats,
describe themselves as being intensely spiritual still have these little quirky things that they
Superstitions.
Yes, that they fall back on. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm not going to be critical of it, although I try not to be superstitious about anything. But you know, that's kind of universal, isn't it?
I think so, but I think superstition comes from magical thought by people that aren't trained. So you know, lots of witches and pagans have black kitties. You know, we love them very much. A lot of people won't adopt them because they're black and they're seeing black as being a negative color, which is funny because, you know, you go into Eastern culture and it's the reverse, you know.
Japanese no theater. They've got the good guys wear black and the bad guys wear white.
Right.
So it's just a choice.
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of people are still holding on to things that are really kind of medieval in origin. And they probably should really let them go. Because the world is not flat.
Right, of course. And we're not burning witches at the stake anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they hung them here in Connecticut, so.
Right.
Yeah. Connecticut still needs to apologize for that. Massachusetts did.
Yeah, so you know you've been on a lot of different angles looking in at the general notion of religions and beliefs. Compare them. I mean, you know, there's probably good in all of them, and bad in all of them. But
well, all of them typically have the golden rule in some way, shape, or form. I think that's something that flows through all of them. I got into an interesting conversation at one point with a Hindu in Bridgeport. He used to be a chemist, and now he owns his own store. And he was coming at it from such a different perspective because obviously I'm in a different place, you know, too. And we were talking at the time about Osama bin Laden, and he was talking about radicalism. He's like, when you take religion to the point of radicalism, it's no longer religion. He said, because religion teaches you how to live a proper life.
Right.
And I think there's really something in that you're living a good life. Even if you don't have a list of thou shalt nots, you have ideas of how you're supposed to function in the world, how you could be a better person, how you could make a difference, how you could more align yourself with deity sometimes too.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, we also have with Buddhism, that's really more of a path than an actual religion per se.
Yeah, more of a philosophy in a sense.
Yes, but you also have the idea of enlightenment. So you still have something that you're trying to progress towards. You're still talking about personal spiritual growth, you know, even your own soul's growth. So I think that religion does serve a purpose on many levels. But I think that there are some underlying things there, like, you know, like living a good life and being good to other people.
Now, this golden rule, is that the karma you were talking about? Or?
Well, karma is, you know, a Hindustani concept. It's not actually a part of Wicca. And we tend to westernize anything, you know, that comes into the U.S. anyway. And so it's not really a carrot and a stick kind of thing. It's kind of like when you throw a stone into a pond, it makes ripples. And those ripples can also come back to the shore as well. You know, you got to think about the repercussions of things on maybe a different level. People tend to go through their lives without thinking about their actions, without thinking about what they're saying, without considering that it may be affecting things not just on a smaller level, but on a larger level. And if you have to back it up a little bit and think about, okay, what am I doing? Is this the proper thing that I do? Then you start getting into the world of ethics. And, you know, no longer are you going towards rights-based ethics. which would give you the list of the thou shalt nots, which would give you a list of like the current laws of the land. You have to consider what's right, what's good for the community, what's good for the people, what's good for the individual, because they're recognizing that one will affect another. So, it's a different dynamic. So when you go into duty-based ethics, that's really, I think, where there can be a dividing line, because for Wiccan paganism, it falls back to older cultures, even though Wicca is a new religion with old roots. It still falls back to collective culture, just like if somebody was practicing acid true, they were practicing Norse tradition. That too is a collective culture where you're not just considering yourself. It's not individualistic. You're considering your clan, your tribe, who you're a part of, your village, maybe your nation. Everything, action that you do is actually, reflects everybody else. So you want to live a better life. You want to do the right thing. You want to do the more honorable thing. So I think that's where a lot of conflicts may actually be coming in on some level, I think, between the modern world and maybe some religions. And I'm not necessarily saying Christianity or Judaism, because it's just, it's written and it's old. But, people keep trying to put a modern veneer on everything and somehow take the politics and the capitalism or whatever ism it is and apply it to religion, and it doesn't work very well, So a lot of what we tend to think about in terms of ethics may actually have to do with the culture that we're actually in. It may have nothing to do with the religion.
Can you expound upon that? Like, what do you mean? Can you explain that a little bit more? Like, what do you mean? What has nothing to do with the religion or the culture? Can you give an example?
Well, let's just say little Johnny goes and he steals some comic books.
Okay.
People, an individualistic culture would say, bad Johnny.
Right.
Johnny shouldn't do that. Johnny might have to go to court.
Right.
If you're talking about more of a collective culture, well, Johnny's in real trouble. Johnny's not in trouble with the law. Johnny is in trouble with his entire family.
Right.
Johnny is in trouble with his entire community. Everybody knows what Johnny did. Oh.
Those are the real external powers in Johnny's life, not a judge.
Yes.
That's who Johnny's got to come home to every single day, and explain his actions and atone for his actions in some way or other, or prove himself all over again.
Right.
Yeah. So really, it's when we look at things like the Golden Rule or karma or anything like this, we have to look at it on another level, because the ethics are definitely affected by the way we view things.
Right. Okay, so it's more like a conscious, what's right and wrong.
Yes.
Than what the law decides is right and wrong.
Yeah, and the craft is supposed to be the craft of the wise. So, hopefully we would try to make better decisions for ourselves, because we're people of the heart, not people of the book. So we have to make ethical decisions.
Right.
I came to Beltane. Yeah. The Beltane that was held, I think, 4 years ago, with a good friend of the show, Gene Hislop. You have to refresh me a little bit about that, about what takes place at Beltane. I, remember parts of it, and I've forgotten parts of it. Yeah. But I think it's good to hear about certain events which are part of the normal process in belonging to a temple.
Oh, well, we kind of have a tiered kind of membership. People can show up to any open event, any open Sabbath, or the Beltane Festival. And, if you want to experience it, you can experience it.
When is Beltane?
Beltane is May 1st traditionally, but we are now holding it on Mother's Day weekend, because that's the weekend we have reserved at the farm.
Okay. And does it always correspond to like a Christian holiday? Because I know traditionally, like certain...
Well, when they came in with the new religion, they said, oh, okay, we want you to worship our way, and that didn't fly real well. So they pretty much attached Christian names to the old holidays.
Right.
And so therefore they got people to worship those holidays, and it was something that was familiar to them. And mind you now, these are people that probably couldn't read and write either.
Right.
So if these were traditions that, seemed like the ones that they grew up with, they felt a lot more comfortable with that. So it was all kind of planned by the church that they, kind of Christianized the heathen days, just like they built, lots of churches, right directly on old temples, on the same property. So
Beltane's the maypole, May Day, right? Maypole, and you dance around the maypole.
Yes, we do dance around the maypole.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So people can come to these, open events. I mean, we're not checking anybody's religion at the door. We don't care. If you like our vibe, that's cool. So we also do have, normally, the moons. We'll worship on the moons. That would be for members, of the temple, people that actually signed up. And then, of course, you've got more of an outer court thing going on with classes and such. At some point, when somebody passes those classes, now we're officially doing a DC tradition, so that changes everything. That person could actually become a member of the coven. And at that point, that's inner court. That's where we would do the real magical work. Because quite frankly, you can't do real magical work with a whole bunch of untrained people.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. Because we're doing something that's actually very sophisticated.
Right.
And until people realize what it actually is that we're doing, understand how to work with it, how to work with the energies, it's not going to really gel. You have to have people that are all of like mind, that you have to understand what everybody's doing. So if you had somebody who was coming in from a whole bunch of different traditions, a bunch of different backgrounds, maybe different pagan religions, trying to make something like that cohesive doesn't really work, which is what I learned after being pagan Unitarian for a while. Mm-hmm. And I got back onto the Wiccan path with a Wiccan teacher. So now we're officially in the process of becoming another Odyssean temple, which is a tradition. Odyssean is a tradition out of Canada, and from the Wiccan Church of Canada. And with that, we also have priesthood. The way that we'll be doing our priesthood is also now different. People have to pass the public classes before they can neophyte. And to neophyte means that you're actually initiated effectively on some level into the tradition. It's equivalent to a Gardnerian first degree. It means you can be taught.
Right.
You become oath-bound at that point, whatever you learn from that point forward. And this is a very heavy tradition that I got into. It requires a whole lot of work. So I expect it would probably take me about another 10 years before I get my third, and that's okay.
Your third what?
Third degree.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's not easy to become a high priest or high priestess in this tradition. So I think I'm up to the challenge.
How many degrees are there? I mean, is it like levels?
There's three. There's three. The 3 degrees in Wicca come from Blue Lodge Masonry, actually. So we have first degree and second degree and third degree.
Oh, but Masonry, like the Masons.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Gardner did borrow from quite a few sources, so not the least of which was Blue Lodge.
Huh.
And what Odyssean has that pre-degree.
Right.
So that you can be taught. Because this changes everything, because in such a way I think that's more suitable. It's suitable for temple worship. And quite frankly, this ended up being a perfect fit for what we were already doing anyhow. Because you can still come from different backgrounds, practices, traditions. You can be multiple traditions. It's cool. But everybody whose priesthood follows the same tradition, you learn the same things. And you get a solid education in what it is that you're doing, and even for public classes, we cover a whole bunch of different things. We cover not just magical, but we also cover things like mythology, different cultures.
Wow.
So at least people are well-rounded. They're having an understanding before they continue in the tradition, because the way traditional Wicca used to be, and still is if you're Gardnerian or Alexandrian, is that, there isn't a whole lot of teaching, per se, before you would,
What are those two terms again?
enter into
Gardnerian or...
the British traditional Wicca, yeah.
Okay, that's Gardnerian.
Gardnerian or Alexandrian.
Alexandrian.
Okay.
Yeah. The way that things used to be, period, is that there weren't all these books, of course, and there wasn't all this educational material floating around. So you were either in or out. You ended up being initiated into something. You weren't quite clear on what you were even being initiated into.
Right, right,
You didn't have a whole lot of instruction beforehand. So at that point, after you became initiated, you would be taught. So this tradition makes a whole lot of sense for me. The way that it works,
Right.
the fact that it fits within a temple structure, so it can have actually a public face, and still have that private face where we can do the serious magical work and do the serious learning. So I'm actually very happy with it, but it's not something for everybody. There's a lot of different traditions out there,
Right.
and there seem to be new ones popping up every day.
That's nothing new there. That's just like every other every religion.
Yeah, we have a lot of different denominations.
How many people that belong to religion and very, very rarely actually attend church? It's kind of a
Right.
We have that too.
yeah.
Yeah, there are people that I'll only see at Beltane because it's a big festival.
Right.
There are people that I'll see, that only come to Sabbats. That's normal. And really, the inner part of the church, the temple, has always been small, always. So it's usually been 4 or 5 people, and occasionally 6 or 7, but usually 4 or 5. That have been keeping everything humming, myself including.
Yeah, you've got your core group that are there on a regular basis. Because at St. Mary's, Father Carl used to say at Christmas, he'd say, "See you at Easter," and at Easter he'd say, "See you at Christmas."
Yes.
Okay, with that we're going to have to cut off. Thank you for joining us, Alicia Lyon Folberth, Emily Volpentesta co-host, and I'm David Stevenson, and I think we've run our course.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks for joining us.